This video features the installation of our spring-centered street kit with our ProMass flywheel. However, kits are available in different configurations based on the torque being produced at the crankshaft and your style of driving. The installation procedure will be the same except for the flywheel and disc being used. The ACT kits for this application are compatible with the factory flywheel as well as the ACT ProMass flywheel. For a complete list of kits and their full details and specifications, please see the description below. While this video provides the basics on how to replace a clutch and flywheel, it is in no way intended to replace a factory service manual. Begin by disconnecting the negative cable from the battery. Move it away from the post to assure it will not make accidental contact. Unfasten and remove the rock guards located under the transfer case, engine, and transmission. Depending on the brand on your vehicle, the hardware, locations, and steps may be different than shown in our video. Working on the rear drive shaft, make sure to mark the drive shaft and output flanges to allow for reassembly in the same position. Unfasten both the front and rear of the drive shaft and remove it from under the vehicle. Repeat this process for the front drive shaft. Inside the vehicle, remove the shift knobs by pulling them in an upward motion. Remove the center console and outer boot assembly. Remove the inner boot. Then unfasten and remove the shift lever. Unfasten and remove the front and center portions of the exhaust. Our vehicle was equipped with a custom exhaust system, so this step will vary depending on your exhaust. Disconnect the transfer case shift cable. Disconnect and remove the sensor on the transmission. Unbolt and remove the transfer case shift cable bracket. Unbolt the transfer case. Disconnect any other sensors and vent hoses from the transfer case. Remove the transfer case from under the vehicle. Free the wiring harness from the transmission. This may require unbolting some brackets. Unbolt and remove the slave cylinder. Unfasten and remove the exhaust bracket located at the bottom right of the transmission. Remove the bell housing bolts. Unfasten the front and side hardware for the fuel tank rock guard and lower it just enough so that you have space for removal of the transmission crossmember. Place a jack under the transmission and unfasten the transmission mounts from the crossmember. Unbolt the crossmember from the frame and remove it from under the vehicle. Before removing the transmission, unbolt and remove the shift tower if you have not done it earlier. Separate the transmission from the engine and remove it from under the vehicle. Unbolt and remove the old pressure plate and disc. Unbolt and remove the old flywheel. If you are reusing the original flywheel, it is recommended that it be resurfaced to guarantee a completely flat friction surface for use with your new clutch kit. Remove the shift fork and release bearing from the transmission. We recommend the shift fork and pivot ball be replaced if there are any signs of wear. We are installing the ACT Heavy Duty Spring-Centered Street Kit along with our ProMass flywheel. The clutch kit and flywheel are sold separately. Place a small amount of lube on the shift fork pivot surfaces. Install the release bearing onto the fork. Lightly coat the disc splines with the lube. Slide the disc onto the input shaft to work the lube into the splines. Remove the disc and wipe off any excess lube to prevent contamination of your new clutch. Lightly coat the guide tube with lube. Install the shift fork and bearing assembly and check for proper operation. Before installing either the factory flywheel or the ACT flywheel, we do recommend installing a new pilot bearing into the flywheel. Be sure to pack the new pilot bearing with grease and then install it into the flywheel using a press or something similar. Make sure the crankshaft mounting surface is free from rust, debris, or dirt. Install the flywheel onto the crankshaft. Using new bolts, install and tighten them in a star pattern until snug. Then torque the bolts to 66 foot-pounds, also in a star pattern. Clean the flywheel and pressure plate friction surfaces with a non-petroleum based cleaner. Set the disc in position, making sure the directional marking is facing in the correct way, and use the alignment tool to hold it in place. Place the pressure plate in position and install the bolts. Tighten the bolts equally in a star pattern until the pressure plate is snug, and then remove the alignment tool. Torque the pressure plate bolts to 26 foot-pounds, also in a star pattern. Lift the transmission back into position and connect it to the back of the engine. Install all the bell housing bolts and tighten them to 37 foot-pounds. Mount the slave cylinder and tighten the nuts to 17 foot-pounds. Place the cross member in position and tighten the hardware to 35 foot-pounds. Fasten the transmission mounts to the cross member and tighten the nuts to 35 foot-pounds. Raise the fuel tank rock guard into position and tighten the hardware. Lift the transfer case back into place and tighten the hardware to 26 foot-pounds. Install the transfer case shift cable bracket. Fit the transfer case shift cable to the lever. Attach the vent hose. Install the sensor on the transmission. Connect the sensors on both the transmission and transfer case. Attach the wiring harness to the transmission. Double check the bell housing bolts to make sure they have all been tightened. Install the shift tower and tighten the hardware to 10 foot-pounds. Make sure to reinstall the insulation between the transmission and body. Install the shift lever and tighten the bolt to 33 foot-pounds. Install the inner boot followed by the center console and outer boot assembly. Install the shift knobs. Making sure to align the marks made during disassembly, install the front drive shaft and tighten the hardware at the front to 89 foot-pounds and the hardware at the rear to 15 foot-pounds. Making sure to align the marks made during disassembly, install the rear drive shaft and tighten the hardware both at the front and rear to 15 foot-pounds. Install the exhaust bracket located at the bottom right of the transmission. Place the exhaust into position, tighten all the clamps and flanges, and make sure the hangers are installed in the rubber isolators. Install and tighten the hardware for the rock guards located under the transfer case, engine, and transmission. Reconnect the ground cable to the battery and tighten the hardware. Support us by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Thank you for watching.